Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Life Talks. Today I have Joseph on from Old Pass Homestead. Joseph, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
So I'll just dive right into it. I spoke about what made me make this podcast 2020, 2021, all of the craziness going on in the world, and kind of just made this podcast looking for answers. And it led me to Christ, which to me is just, it is the way. And I know when you say that in the world, it sounds crazy. It sounds so simple, and I always think of, like, there's the Ned Flanders of the world, and the people who are truly seeking it and living it. I know you post some stuff on Christ a lot, and
hmm
maybe we could just start there.
Okay.
What led you to the spiritual path to Christ? Maybe if you could just talk a little bit about your story.
Um, I was not raised religiously at all. I mean, some of my youngest memories are my grandpa taking me to church. But as far as my dad, my mom, never went to church. My great grandpa actually was a Pentecostal pastor. And if you're not used to the Pentecostal world, that can be scary. So,
I'm
wasn't
not.
really
What is that? I've heard Pentecostal, but I'm not. Maybe you could.
They were Pentecostal holiness. It was a lot of singing and shouting and running up and down the aisles, and people looking like they're having seizures in the front of the church. And it's their belief. It's the Holy Spirit upon your body that makes you do those crazy things, speaking in tongues, stuff like that. Funny thing about my great grandpa being a pastor. When he was younger, I love telling this story. I'm from North Carolina. When I was, my whole family's from up there, even though I'm in Mississippi now. But when my great grandpa was younger, he was actually banned from the city limits of the town closest to him because he kept stealing people's livestock. So after sunset, he was not allowed in town by law. And then, man became a pastor. But so my story wasn't raised in anything. When I got into high school, ninth grade, there was a pretty girl across the street. They went to church. I decided I liked her, and going to church with her would, give me some brownie points. That church turned out to be a cult. They have a compound in Georgia. Then I guess they still have it now, outside of Athens, Georgia. But that really, the preacher proclaimed himself God. That he was God, and in my view, I know now that was a cult. Looking back then, that was my view of Christianity, and these people are crazy. And I got away from that. I got away from the church. I mean, I went to a couple different churches with a couple different people, but I pretty much had an image of Christianity in my mind. Um, excuse me, dealing with allergies down here. The oak pollen is covering everything. The where was I at? Okay, so 10th, 11th grade, met some people, kind of got into witchcraft and paganism. I carried that with me through high school, graduation, on into the military. My dog tags had Wiccan as my religion of choice on them, and that persisted for years. I mean, we're talking straight up witches, coven meetings, circles, spells being cast, like the whole 9 yards. At some point, I was almost murdered by a guy who wanted into the coven that I was in, and it was kind of my first exposure to something demonic. Was this guy? And then I started noticing a lot of, um, I say demonic. I look back now knowing it's demonic. Then I didn't know what I was dealing with, right? But I knew it was bad, and I wanted to get away from it all. So I ended up getting out of that. Um, I kept the moniker the pagan for a couple more years because I was a tattoo artist at the time, and that was my tattoo name, was pagan. Um, kind of became. I told everybody at the time atheist. I know now I was agnostic. I knew something was there. Didn't know what was there. Didn't look into it because at the tattoo parlor, man, it was drugs and alcohol and girls, and you know, it went a different girl a week was not unheard of. It was just a party life for years, and couldn't shake the emptiness inside of me that alcohol and drugs and girls was not fulfilling. So I began exploring, and I explored, and I explored Buddhism, I explored Islam, I explored Taoism. I looked into Hinduism. Hinduism was pretty close to paganism, and the Celtic and Norse gods that we were doing. The Hindus have all their gods, but I never really settled anywhere until I met the woman that's now my wife. So we left North Carolina, moved to Mississippi together, and still dating at this time. And she was like, "I want you to come to church with me," and I resisted for a little while, and finally I was like, "All
At
right,
what
I'll
age
go."
were you at? Because you had mentioned 10th, 11th, and now where was
I'm at 29 years old now.
after all of this? Okay.
Yeah, so this exploration, I spent a decade exploring everything. So I started at 23 looking into Buddhism, and by the time I got to 29, almost 30 years old, I kind of had settled back into being agnostic, because I wasn't finding what I was looking for, but I was not going back to the crazy Christians because I didn't had my fill of that. I remember the singing, dancing seizures when I was younger. I remembered the guy screaming he was God at the front of the church I attended in high school. Like, I didn't want no part of any of that, right?
What did
It,
the girl say? Just out of curiosity, from ninth grade, what got you into that at the beginning? Was she like when you started saying like this is kind of crazy? Did you relay that to her, and like what was her response, if any?
she said, "This is who we are."
Wow. So she was in it.
She was in it, which I did find out after high school. She got away from it.
Yeah.
She ran off to California with somebody, and I don't know what happened to her in that time period that turned her. But a lot of groups like that, a lot of bad things tend to happen. So
Sure.
you can only imagine.
Yeah.
But I did. I told her that it's. I told her they were crazy. I told them all of them was crazy. I've been pretty blunt my whole life, and she was like, "It's who we are." And I still remembered having that. I snuck out my bedroom that night and met her on the road, and we talked. And walking up and down the road talking, and that's when all that went down. And I'll never forget her looking at me. She goes, "That's just who we are." But I never went back to the church, and they repeatedly invited me to come back many times, but I never accepted.
So back to Mississippi, 29,
Mhm.
10 years of exploring. You're now in a place where you're agnostic, essentially, and what leads from there?
So my then girlfriend, now wife, she was like, "I'd really enjoy it." No, well, okay, so when I met her, she already had two sons, right? So I come into this pre-made family. Yeah, I say that to say this. She looked at me. She goes, I would like us to attend church as a family." She goes, "You don't have to. There's no pressure." But she would invite me every so often. "Hey, love it if you came to church," or "Hey, come the night. We got a potluck afterwards." And eventually, I started. Yeah, I'll go. And I went, and the church wasn't. It still was weird for me. So it was an independent fundamental Baptist church I were going to, and there's a lot of legalism there, a lot of legalism, and I was aware of it just because I had begun studying the Bible myself. Because she liked to have conversations and talk to me about things, and she would read something and she'd be like, "What do you think this means?" So I started studying to just be able to intelligently talk with my girlfriend. But I can look past. I'm one of those people. We don't have to agree on everything. I can look past the small stuff. I can look past the church saying women will have to wear dresses and long hair or they're in sin. Like, to me, that's stupid. That's not in the Bible anywhere. And but again, I can look past that. I can look past men are supposed to wear suits. I look pretty good in a suit, so I didn't mind wearing a suit every Sunday because there was a basic gospel truth in there that I was finding from my own reading that I was I agree. All right, this is biblical. I still wasn't sure how much of it I believed, but I could at least say he's agreeing with what I'm reading. Right. Um, 31, my daughter was born, and it was that year. Been going to church for a couple of years at this point. I had a moment in my backyard one night. I was drinking, smoking, out here listening to loud music by myself, and I got driven to my knees by something, and I just started bawling, and I just begged Christ for forgiveness, and I don't know what brought any of that on because I was having a good old time by myself drinking. Right, that was my conversion moment. Set down the beer for a long time after that, and started taking church more serious. I was there every time the doors was opened. Started to kind of fall into the independent fundamental Baptist legalism and everything. I started grasping on everything. You know how the new Christian is when they're hot and they're on fire for everything that they can just absorb. Even if that absorbing can be bad teaching, but that's another conversation. And that was my conversion. I was 31, almost 32 years old when I finally hit my knees and accepted Christ for who Christ is.
Would you say that, because that, that when I hear that, it's like, I feel like it's some of the weakest moments in my life. I've been looking for that sign, right? It's almost like a blessing. Would you say that, and not everyone is that fortunate, their journey can be a lot slower, but, to also say that you went through the 10 years of searching and a lot of the hell that you went through, you could say that kind of led you that. But would you say that in that moment your heart was open, like in that period of your life where you're like, I really want some answers here, or I'm in a position where I'm letting go, like what is the truth? When that night kind of happened, you were going to church with your wife, and this was kind of, like, I'm looking for answers. I have an open mind. Lead me. Like, was it in that window?
All right, I'll tell the rest of the story. So I don't tell this part of the story because a lot of people think I'm nuts.
Yeah, well,
that night I hit my knees, I was bawling, crying. And when I say my mind's eye, you can see the picture in your head that you can see, right?
Yeah.
When I was bawling, I could see someone standing behind me, and I felt a love so strong that I thought it was going to kill me. Like, I don't know how else to describe that. The feeling of love and joy was so heavy in my chest I couldn't breathe, and I thought it was going to kill me. And I don't tell that story again because a lot of people think I'm nuts, but I think I saw Christ standing behind me. I don't think I could deny it at that point. Yeah. It was I want you. I'm coming to grab you and claim you and take you with me. So my heart was definitely open at that point, and then, yeah, I just began absorbing everything I could absorb, wherever I could absorb it from. We're talking, I was on YouTube watching Paul Washer and Leonard Ravenhill sermons, and there's a sermon mix-up called the greatest or the most anointing preaching ever. It's on YouTube, and it is a mixture of different preachers preaching different sermons, and there's music playing in the background, and it's so strong and it's so powerful. And I was just taking in everything I could take in, and I still do that all these years later. I'm on a different level now, but yeah, there's no end to my learning, and there's no end to what I'm absorbing. Because there's no end to God, and there's no way that any of us can understand Him fully in 1,000 lifetimes of learning.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that because the two words that have been in my heart right now is humility and courage. That's what I think we need, and a lot of I call it true Christians. And I say that with a grain of salt. Like what defines a true Christian to me is someone who is, their heart is truly open, but they're also not going the way of the world, right?
Right.
You have an open mind, but I've heard your mind's not so open that your brains fall out, because there's so many false teachings out there. But I think I would say we're on the same path based on the posts that I've seen, and I'm speaking to you right now for the first time. How do you navigate as far as, or have you come to learn to navigate between courage and humility in these times? And what I mean by that is, like, on one end, I think a lot of Christians, I don't want to say need less humility, because I think we should always have humility, but we're we're dealing, I think, collectively with a lot of people of this know-it-all mentality. And I think that we need courage. We need courage to say what we feel about vaccines. We need courage to say about what schools are teaching. We need courage to speak our convictions. Not to
Sure.
prove other people wrong, but to stand for what is right. How have you navigated that?
I've I'm a very blunt person, and I have been my entire life. I've not. I don't even know if I call it courage so much as habit, as far as standing my ground on what I believe in. So I generally don't care what people feel about me. Um, Again, I've been that way my whole life. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yep.
When it comes down to it, maybe I need less. If that's courage, maybe I need less of it and more compassion. Honestly, that's something that I need more. You say we need less humility, more courage. Um, I would argue maybe that we need more compassion as Christians
Mm.
in the world. I see, I've seen Christians that I know are good Christian people walk past a homeless man hungry on the side of the road. Well, he's gonna take that $5 and buy some beer. You know what, he might. But the Bible also says that we entertain angels unaware.
Mm.
So, humility, biblical humility, is a little bit different than the definition that we use with now. We're actually going through a Bible study here at my house on Beatitudes right now, and so they were talking about the meek will inherit the earth. Blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the kingdom of God. And we're talking more of again the compassionate standpoint of everything. So Christ is our example. His life is our example of everything. Hold on one second. Vacate the area I was in.
All good.
Um, what was I saying?
You were speaking about the Beatitudes and that you're doing a Bible.
Oh yeah. So humbleness and humility is something that we kind of lack a lot of, and it's not like the meek shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not laying down and taking it.
Correct.
But that's what everybody thinks.
Yes.
Humility is not sitting back and just letting people walk all over us and being. It's to practice humility as a Christian is. So let's say we're in conversation. You're attacking Christianity. I'm defending Christianity, right?
Yeah.
To do so in humility would be to defend Christianity in love, to not get angry, to not start calling names, to not
Yep.
let my temper get raised up. It's not what I think people think of when they think of those words.
Yep.
And again, we got to look at the life of Christ. He gives us the example to follow on how to be humble. on how to be meek, on how to be strong, on how to be courageous, in what ways we should be courageous. The Bible is full of so much stuff, um, Michael, that just is not followed by Christians today. So uh, I'm going to, Lord forgive me, toot my own horn on something for a minute. Friday, March 13th, 2020, pandemic was declared, and I was laid off from my job. And within the next few weeks, everybody was laying off from work, and you couldn't find a job anywhere. And that's when I got into flipping with Joe Hart, right? Because I
I
was,
was watching Gary Vee and I was watching what Joe Hart was putting out. I failed because I didn't really give it my all when I was doing it, but there's definitely money to be made there.
yeah, it's the group went in a different direction, and it went in a direction I could afford to follow. That's where I failed out there. When it was buying, that's wrong. I can't blame the group for anything. It was easy for me because states like where you are were shut down.
Hmm.
New York was shut down. California was shut down. Michigan, everybody was shut down. Mississippi, wide open. Masks were not enforced here, except by Walmart. Walmart would force you to wear a mask if you wanted to come in the store. Other than that, and you walked in the store and you pulled your mask off. Everybody did. They just wanted it on when you walked through the front doors. So I made a killing just going shopping at Walmart and Academy Sports and Target because I could go get things that nobody else in any part of the country could get. And I didn't even jack the prices up on things. So if I looked at New York and California, whose prices are about the same on items, and those prices are 10 to 12 times more than what they are in South Mississippi. So I would get on eBay and sell everything at what you would buy in New Jersey at the price you would buy it, or around about that price, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't really ripping people off. I didn't feel like it. I felt like I was still providing
Essentially, yeah.
stuff that they needed, but I was making a profit at it. I had in May of 2020, I had a couple $1,000 days selling weights.
Yeah, I remember weights. Yep, weights,
Yeah,
tools.
I was keeping Academy Sports, man. The guy in the weights, the workout department, fitness department, he had my phone number. Like, man, we got a truck coming tomorrow. I'd be there at 7 in the morning and just clear out the barbells.
Yep, because everyone wanted to work out from home. Webcams, I think, were also on there too.
Yeah, never got in the webcams. Never had to. I was doing $1,000 a day on barbells.
Yeah.
And I would buy it. And Joe taught me this. We would get to the parking lot, unbag it, take pictures of the items in the trunk, get in the car, turn on the AC, post it on eBay. Before I got home, which is a 35, 40-minute drive, everything I posted was sold. So we'd come home and I'd box it up and just go on up to the post office. Well, I was fulfilling orders within 2 hours of paying.
Wow.
And it worked out great. The lady at the post office, she got really tired of seeing me. She's like, you're making, because the one shipping method they got, you can ship up to 70 pounds at a flat price, flat rate shipping.
Yep.
And if it was 70 pounds, there was 68 pounds in that box. That woman hated me. And she was like, but she told me, she's like, you're smart. You're making use of that weightage. But yeah, so man, I just went off on that tangent and I can't remember where I was going.
No, it's fine. I do want to dive back into it though. But just kind of recap for people listening. It's just, there are ways to make money outside of your 9 to 5, and if you just plant those seeds. And when he brought up Joseph Hart, he's on there. Is he still doing, what was it? Products for Profit?
He's merged with somebody now, and West Coast Goods or West Coast something.
Okay.
They merged a year and a half, 2 years ago, And now they've brought on a third party that's handling a lot of stuff for them. But they're making a killing,
Good for him, man. Wish him
and
well.
I consider getting back into it. Like what they're doing now is, um, from what I gathered, I don't sit in on, I haven't sat in on a Zoom call in 2 years. But from what I've been watching people post, and it makes a lot of sense, is they're finding what's hot on Amazon. It's all Amazon based now, right? So you find what's hot on Amazon, you go to Alibaba.com, you buy a crap ton of that stuff from China,
Yeah.
bring it in, sit it in the Amazon warehouse in their fulfillment program, and you do nothing. You order from China, it ships to Amazon, and it sells on Amazon. Amazon ships it out, and you sit back and collect the leftover money.
Yeah.
If you got the money to get into it, it's brilliant. I figured out what they're doing because, um, especially this year, and I've always tried to buy American. I've always tried to buy local, but let's face it, most of our goods come from China, right? So nursery pots. Anybody who's bought plants know that the starts come in little seed trays, right?
Yeah.
Those aren't made in America. They're not made in America. Um, there might be some all natural, organic, made from recycled material ones that are made in America, but um, as a small farm or nursery, you're not going to make any money using that stuff. That's for the hobby gardener that wants, be a little more eco conscious and buy a USA. So I just bought 1,000 planters on Alibaba.com last week. I paid $9. That includes shipping it here.
How many?
1,000.
How
But
much do
if
they
I
weigh each?
do what?
How much do they weigh? The pots.
Individually, not much. 1,000 of them, I imagine, is going to be 100 and some pounds.
Yeah.
But when you order through Alibaba or AliExpress, it just gets put on a container that's already heading here.
Yeah.
Right. So if they got a 10,000 pound container that has 8,000 pounds in it, they got 2,000 pounds of spare. They'll just throw your order in there with that and ship it across. Right. So it's there's a reason peaches are grown in Georgia and shipped to Argentina to be canned and then shipped to Sri Lanka to be labeled and then shipped back to the United States to be sold. It's cheaper that way than canning and labeling and shipping around the United States.
Yeah.
So that's global trade. That's where we're at. So even in with me living the lifestyle that I live with homesteading, self sufficiency, I understand that I have to make money and I have to play the global economy. Before I got laid off, I spent 10 years in logistics. Shipping crap is what I did for 10 years. That was my expertise. Inventory management and shipping. So I got 1,000 of these cell trays coming in. I get to plant 8,000 plants. It costs me a little under $10 to get it all done. If I buy 720 cell trays on Amazon, I'm paying $35 for it.
Yeah.
So I understand how they're working, ordering, because you're ordering straight from the manufacturer in China's warehouse. That's where it's shipping from. There's no second, third party involved in any of this. And that's where you make money. That's where you make money on Amazon. Amazon, Walmart, Target. Think about how much you buy is made in China. Again, there are products that I will only buy that's American made. There's products I will only buy that is local to South Mississippi. So you have to know where the quality is going to be at. So obviously, what I'm getting from China, it's a one-time use. I'm never going to use it again. I got to buy more next year. Versus, we do laser engraving, custom laser engraving here on the farm. One thing that I use is local hardwoods. It is timbered and milled locally. Bring it in. I sand it. I stain it. I engrave it. And now we're talking a whole different level of quality of material, right? So it's all economics. Everything's economics. It's either economics or you're living in the woods. So,
Yeah.
or working for the man. I haven't had a corporate job in 4 years. March 13th will be 4 years I was let go. The one exception for that is I spent a few weeks on a commercial bee farm because they needed some extra help harvesting honey. And so 3 weeks out of 4 years. Other than that, I've worked for myself. I remember where I was going with all this. So this is back to Christianity, back to the Bible, and the Bible being full of stuff that Christians don't follow. And
Yeah,
it
you were
irks me.
talking about the Beatitudes, right?
Yes, the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. This comes out towards the end of the sermon. The Sermon on the Mount is my favorite part of the Bible. Period. Jesus starts talking at the end about our Heavenly Father. He knows our needs. He says, "Look at the birds. Look at the flowers in the field. How they're dressed. Um, they don't worry about anything because God provides their needs. And how much more are we than they?
Yeah.
But we only have to have faith, right?" I have lived off of the faith of God's provision for 4 years. I am married. I have 3 children. We're about to adopt 2 more. And I run a 3-acre farm in South Mississippi on faith that God's providing for us. And He has. I have more money now than I had when I worked a 9 to 5. I have less bill stress now than I worked a 9 to 5. And Michael, I don't know where my money's coming from tomorrow, right? So I don't know if I'm going to sell $300 in soap tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to sell $50 in hot sauce. I don't know if I'm going to get a big custom order. I might not make anything tomorrow. It's just part of the life that I live, and it's living on faith. But why I say that bothers me so much is because Christ promises us that provision. It's there in black and white, or in red if you got a red letter Bible. But so many Christians have a hard time having that faith, and that one thing, that one promise that was promised to us by God. There's a lot of things that can be interpreted as promised to us. That's where you get prosperity preachers.
Yep.
Live your best life now. Well, that's not what the Bible says, but it's easy to sell when you cherry pick some verses.
Yep.
But you have the words of Christ going, if you have faith and just ask the Father, He's going to give it to you. And so when we struggle to listen to a black and white promise, it's no wonder we struggle with humility and being humble and having courage. We struggle with the known promises, right? It's a whole thing. I've preached a couple sermons on this. I am an ordained preacher, by the way, in case we didn't know that. But it is. I wish I had my notes in front of me. I can go so much deeper, but off the top of my head, this is where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, and I respect it because I can resonate with someone who's a preacher who can say, I've screwed up. You admit fault. Essentially, you said you're a sinner, right? You've gone the
Yes.
wrong way, and I resonate that with because it's also said, right? All have fallen short of the glory of God. So this idea that, I know for phases in my life, especially when I was younger, you look at these people in Hollywood or the biggest role model. Yeah, look at like an Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was younger. He was like, I look up to him, and it's like now, just like you just see all these celebrities being exposed for who they are, and it starts to really just don't put your trust in man, put your trust in God, and it's really it's refreshing to be able to speak with and most of the guests that I've had on have had that same mentality. They're people who are sinners who are um, trying to find that right way. And there's been a couple of things in my heart, which is one of them. I mean, I struggled with porn for a long time. I've spoken about it before.
Sure.
It's the quote, that which I want to do, I don't do, and that which I don't want to do, that I do, or some variation. I don't know if that's the exact words, but the part of us has to die, right? That the idea of that rebirth, that's really been on my heart. And how do you, like, we as a person can't do anything about that, right? And that's where I feel like that's how you, to tie this all together, that's how we, I think, convert other people. The
Yeah.
way that you convert people is not by converting them, right? In the same way that when you said your wife said, "Hey, you know what? You want to come to church? You know, no pressure. We're doing this, right?" And
Hmm.
there's much more power in that than saying, like I am God, right? Or like, doing all this kind of gymnastics in church. It's like it's essentially common sense, a deep rooted common sense, right? It's a peace. The way that you convert other people is it's not force, and there's so much power in that. So, and I think in the same way, you mentioned the masks in Walmart. Something that I've thought about is like, you know, can you walk in without a mask and not prove other people that you're, like, and to do it with peace? It's like, because that was like a thing. Because if you don't, I feel like it was a similar thing that Christ went through, right? That when he's speaking these words, or he's around people who are like, they're just following what everybody else is doing, and he's walking by the Spirit. Like, it's hard to put into words in the same way that you said that Christ had you. Like, there's this kind of, it's like, how do you navigate in the world? I guess it's essentially just trusting yourself. And I know that sounds so simple, but, and not yourself, it's the Spirit within you, God within you, right?
Right.
Because lean not on your own understanding. But I just think of the vax and the vaccines. Like, people are lost. So what are you going to do? Prove them wrong, or tell them they're wrong? Or, we can't judge other people, but we also have to speak for what we believe is true. And many times, that's another quote that comes to mind, is that quote of, this has really been on my heart, is where Christ says, "I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." I love that. I've essentially that this is where I guess to the ego, it's like paradoxical, but to the Spirit, it's just pure.
Yeah.
There's truth, and that's it. And when you start speaking truth, a lot of people will hate you for that, but it's to not take it personally,
Yeah.
because it's within them.
And yeah, let's go to the masking thing. I have family members that believed in the vax 100%.
Yep.
The masking, the whole 9 yards. I didn't, but when I would go to their house, I would wear a mask because that was where that's their place, right? So it was respectful to observe their beliefs, even though it wasn't my own. But when they came to my house, I didn't wear a mask. They could, I didn't care. I would not. Um, and that led often to either not coming to my house or coming to my house and staying outside, never actually entering my home, which again was fine. So we have to approach everything like that. I heard I heard a preacher say one time, and I'm sure many preachers have said this, but our best evangelism occurs in our lifestyle,
Mm.
what people see. So with my wife, she is one of the kindest, happiest people you'll ever meet, and her joy comes from Christ and her service to Christ. That woman will serve a church like you would not believe, like above and beyond. Like even the preachers, like you gotta chill a little. And when she worked at the church we used to attend, she'd get there at 6 o'clock in the morning. She wouldn't leave till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night every day, 6 days, 7 days a week, because we had church on Sundays. So it was, but she loved it, and I saw all that. I saw that happiness and that joy and that kindness, and I was like, I want some of that. Now, I'm a very different person than her. I did not get the absolute pure, constant joy. I struggle with some things my whole life, anger being a big one. Talk about your porn struggle. I've had a lot of anger struggles in my life. I actually boiled down to last January 2023. We're in 2024 now. My wife told me one night that she was going to leave if I didn't get my crap under control. And I don't know if you've seen last January, February, I became very public with my anger. And I posted a lot, especially on Twitter, about what I was dealing with and ways to deal with anger and the stupidity of to hold myself responsible, I had to become public with it because I knew out there are men like you. We know each other, but I got people like Kyle. He's at Kyle on Twitter. I got people like John Haskins. I got people like Jeff Putnam who will pick up the phone and call me or text me and be like, "What's your problem?" I know I have accountability circle there publicly. And should everybody take their problems public? That ain't what I'm saying, but you find the source that works for you to deal with it.
Yeah.
But you approach everything with that level of, and I think this goes back to compassion. If you want to talk to a Muslim, I've been to a mosque. As a Christian, I've been to a mosque. And when I walked into the front door, I took my shoes off because it's a holy place for them. And it's not a sin for me to respect their belief.
Yeah.
Whether it's vaccines or other religions or you can get into homosexual lifestyles or abortion issues. Everything can be approached from a place of respect and love, because you're not going to get discourse conversation. You're not going to convert anybody to your opinion any other way. The first time you go, you're wrong, or the first time a Christian goes up to a gay man and says, "You're going to hell."
Yeah.
You've completely shut down all conversation and narrative at that point. And that's how my wife. That's how she
disagreed
approached
with
me.
Westboro. Like God hates fags thing never sat with me, but at the same time, this idea that now you have the flags outside of church, LGBTQ flags, and you're pushing this on children. It's like it's swung so much the other way, and that's where it's like, I think people need Christ to be able to speak truth. This is the truth. This is wrong. And then I think that's why I've been really reflecting on the courage and humility, because we have to have the courage and ultimately the courage of our convictions, reflecting on it, understanding it, not just regurgitating Bible verses, really understanding the heart of it.
That swinging the other direction thing, though, like that's a whole different matter, in my opinion. It's a whole different problem. What you have there isn't approaching something with compassion and love. What you have there is acceptance of the world over the kingdom. So now you have, I don't want people to look at me badly or say bad things about me, so I'm just going to go along with this. Well, now you've accepted the world.
Yeah.
And you've thrown the kingdom of Christ to the side. My sister's lesbian, married to a woman. I attended her wedding and took their photographs. I don't believe in that lifestyle. But I'm not going to be hateful to my sister. I'm not going to be unloving to my sister. I'm not going to be.
Now, if she asks your views, you still speak what you believe to be true, right? If she says you believe that,
I do. We've had that conversation.
Gotcha.
And she's asked me, "Do you view me any differently?" I said, "I've always viewed you as my sister."
Yeah.
So it is, and it's been a very long time since her and I had a conversation. It was, but at the same time, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, I think I was the first person she told. And we're talking 20 years ago, 20 some years ago, so it's been a while. But
yeah, I think it could be said that there's plenty of people who are straight who are living in the world, right?
Yes.
So and I think that's an important distinction. And there's been a couple preachers that have been pop up on my feed from time to time. There's one preacher. I don't know if he's a preacher. He's been on campuses. He's a college professor. I forgot his name off the top of my head, but
He has
um,
debates.
yeah, he has
Yep.
debates.
Yep. I know you're
Um,
talking about.
yeah, I forgot his name. Um, but he has a way of just really expressing these ideas in a way that's just it's received. He listens to that other person, but he also says countless times where he's like, I'd love, there's a part of me, if I give into that flesh, like I'd love to sleep with multiple women, right? But I don't do it. I don't
Sure.
act on it. So just because, I want to do something, I feel this way, it doesn't mean I act on it. And there's plenty of things in that example. And what I like about that is that it separates aside, you're gay or you're straight. It's like, no, there's sin and there's not sin, like there's
Right.
life, right? So it's all these identities, and the more split identities there are, the more there's that division.
Right. And it's one of my old preachers up in North Carolina. He said during a sermon one time, he's like, if a beautiful naked woman walks down that aisle right now, he looked at his wife. He goes, I'm sorry, honey, but I'm going to look at her. I'm a guy.
Yep.
I'm human. I'm flesh, and I'm a sinner. He goes, I'll look at her like I look at the sun, a glance and look away, but the look's still going to be there. He goes, I can't deny that. So that's where we all are. We're all sinners. I have a guy on Twitter that reaches out to me from time to time. He's a gay guy. He's a Christian. He is struggling with the two together, and we talk briefly whenever he's having it really rough. And I've never condemned him, and I'm never going to condemn him because as soon as you start judging somebody, here's the lesson for all your listeners: as soon as you begin to judge somebody, at that point you're saying you're better than God,
Mm.
that you can do His job better than He can, because God is our judge. God is our judge, and I'm not saying that in terms of um, people like to say, "Judge not, lest you be judged." We're talking two different things. As soon as you start saying he's gay, he's going to hell, you have passed condemnation on somebody. You have passed judgment of damnation. That is none of our jobs, right? So even the thought of it, Michael, is sinful for us to do. You can't even think it.
Yeah, because you're claiming to be God without saying the words.
Well,
Um,
if you commit adultery by looking at a woman, if you, and Jesus says adultery in your heart's the same as adultery in the
yeah.
flesh, then that passes on to every thought, every sinful thought that we have. And it's
And how do you reconcile that with right judgment, right? Because that's the other thing is that because I think there is um, I think there's a problem with because I've been reflecting on this, the idea of like a shameless society is not a good society. So I think shame has its proper place. Um,
there is well we're told to judge. So judge not lest
that's
ye be
it.
judged.
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't understand, it's talking about judging your fellow Christians. That whole section, don't the sty in your brother's eye when you have a beam in your own.
Yeah.
Right. But if you go on down past that, Jesus starts telling us exactly how to judge each other. You judge a tree by the fruit that it bears.
Mm.
Um, a thorn bush doesn't grow apples. So what he's saying is if a bad tree grows good fruit, or if a good tree grows bad fruit, then it is false.
Mm.
So we're told how to judge um, other people's behaviors because it is necessary for the purity of the kingdom of Christ and the purity of ourselves. And really, it's a protection for ourselves because I don't know about you, but I can pretty easily fall in sin.
Absolutely. That's
It
what's
doesn't take much.
it's such a paradox though. That's where because a part of me I don't want I mean your story definitely I would say is more unique, what you went through. But for me growing up, I went to church, but it was kind of like this dull. Like I remember looking at the clock every time I was at church. Like, when is this over? And it was just, now I look back at it, and it was something that, like, I just wasn't listening,
Right.
And now I look at it like it really is when he says, like, it's really food. Man shall not live by bread and bread alone, like, but by every word of the Holy Spirit. Like, that is the real food. And, like, that's what I was saying. It's really just a deep rooted common sense. Because a lot of people say understanding, like, I love really transcends understanding. It really, that, like, in the sense that it completes it. And a lot of what people call love is emotion, and it's not transcending understanding. It's
Right.
actually fearing to not be liked, or doing, just appearing, just avoiding. And I've been guilty of that in my life, and I don't want that. I feel like where I'm at now in my life is, I believe, help me to remove my disbelief.
Well, we use the word love, which is one of the most powerful words you can use, because God is love. But we use the word love so loosely, it's lost a lot of meaning. For
Yep.
a lot of people. So my favorite food is hamburgers. Oh, Um, most people go, "I love hamburgers. I love them. I need a hamburger every meal." Versus saying, I really enjoy a hamburger. And
Mm.
I'm not trying to sound all grammar Nazi, but what I'm trying to say is, by removing the word love from your vocabulary so regularly, you will you can start claiming the power of that word back again. So love, I personally try to make, and I still slip. I still do it. Oh, I'd love to have a hamburger. You know, um, but I'm trying to keep that word for use in prayer. I love you, God. I love you, Father. With my wife, with my children. You know, the deeper meaning is in there, and the reason I do it is because I think we are conditioned now as a society to become numb to all this stuff, good and bad.
Yeah.
Love
Where
is
there's no
powerful.
meaning.
Love is powerful. Love can make change. So whether whatever your belief is, whether there's an elite bodega of small families that control the earth, or you just have a bunch of power hungry people in politics, they don't want our society coming together in love for each other to make positive changes, because then you start losing power and you start losing authority that way.
Yeah, I heard something recently. The 1% are against the 4%. With the 1% control the 4%, and we're essentially in the 5% against that other 5%,
Yeah,
trying to keep the other 90% asleep versus waking them up. And
yeah.
that's, like, something that I think about, where it's like, it's it's something that, if you look at the average person, let's say in your Walmart, there's a part, let's say the false part, ego, that you say, look at these idiots. Look at people. People are stupid, and you can become cynical, or you can shift that, where it's like, well, I was stupid, and everybody's going to grow in different ways at different times. And I believe in the American people. I believe in the people that they'll wake up. And the alternative to that is, I don't believe in people going to trust authority. These people are too stupid to think for themselves, and we are stupid as a collective. But you know, it's that, to me, I think, it's that shift.
Oh yeah,
And
I heard that in a movie one time, and it stuck with me ever since. The
what's that?
individual is intelligent. The masses are dumb.
Oh yeah, was that I think it was Men in Black, right?
It may have been. It's been a long time since I seen that movie.
And he's like, "Is
But
it worth it?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." In that scene, yeah, because he goes, yeah, individual smart, Cable, yeah, but people are dumb, stupid. You know it. Yeah.
and it's so true. But it's why there's such power in words, right? I know we grew up sticks and stones. We break our bones, and words will never hurt us. I heard that all through the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
That's not true. Words are very powerful. Um, in witchcraft, I was in witchcraft. It's words. It's people speak affirmations.
Spelling.
Yeah, people speak affirmations. They speak this positivity into truth. It's the same way with spell work and witchcraft. You speak energy into flowing. It's the same way in prayer. We speak power into moving. So there's such. Uh, it's where the pen is mightier than the sword because you can write words with the pen versus draw blood with the sword. So there's so much power in words that there's a big, I feel, campaign conspiracy to really numb us down. How do you take away everything's a genocide now? Everybody's a Nazi now. These words are thrown around so much that when the genocide's actually occurring in places like Armenia or Nigeria, it doesn't even make the news. There's true genocides happening there right now today, and it's how they numb the collective people. So to gain full authoritative power over everybody, you have to destroy the family dynamic. You have to destroy friendships and relationships and tribalism that occurs naturally amongst the people, and you do that by taking away the power of words of love and companionship, and you numb it. You make it mean nothing anymore, and you do that by overusing the overuse of the word. It's, I don't know, love and hate. Those are two really big ones, and they're both very overused. Hate, the word hate can completely destroy somebody mentally and physically. I've been through two teenagers now. Well, I've been through one teenager. He's an adult now. I got another teenager. I got one about to enter into teenagerness, and then I've heard the word hate a lot, and it is a damaging, painful word to hear from someone that you love. And I know they don't hate me, but they're using the wrong word. So the damage is still being dealt. To the point that the one I'm dealing with now, who is me, 100% me, he's not even my child, flesh and blood, but he is me. I look at him, 15-year-old him, and I see 15-year-old me. And he's told me he's hated me so many times now, I'm numb to it. He says that it doesn't bother me anymore. And it bothers me that it doesn't bother me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's just where we go on with it. That's why there's so much violence and sex on TV. Anything new Disney puts out has homosexuality in it. It's just exposure to it. So much exposure to it, and you expose people. You numb them by exposing them to it. It's a soldier overseas at war. He becomes numb to the war while he's there. It's only when you take him back out of it that you start getting things like PTSD setting in. Right? So I've quit watching anything with nudity or violence in it.
Yeah, same here. But with the exception of the old school, I mean, Lion King to me is still one of my favorites. I think that has, in my view, some of the, and I'm sure there might be some subliminal stuff. So I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
that
story to me is one of my favorites because it's just.
There's still some things like I watched The Godfather a few months ago. It's one of my favorite movies. So there's still some stuff, but
yeah. But for the most part now, yeah, I agree.
I turned on a show, Yellowstone. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Everybody's raved about Yellowstone. My dad loves Yellowstone. And it has Kevin Costner in it, who I've always liked. I grew up Dances with Wolves and things like that. And 20-some minutes in episode 1, they're having sex on a dresser.
Yep.
And I was like, what is this? I haven't watched any more of it since. Um, Netflix had a show on called Rome, and it was kind of cool. It was like a docudrama. So it was like watching a show, but they were teaching historical facts in there too, right? Episode 3, we're full breast out, and I'm like, you can't watch anything. It's there. It's everywhere. I don't even know what we was watching the other day. My kid showed me something on YouTube. He sent it to me in a text, and I opened up the link and we get a couple minutes into it, and the amount of cussing that come out of there, um, I had to stop it. I was so repulsed by it, and
Yeah, and you have a unique. I would say you would have a more unique perspective because you've gone to a darker place, and part of that, I think, like in your 20s, part of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be like you understand more of how that path, where that path leads. So you kind of have like an experience of knowing where that goes, right? So
yeah,
it's
that's
like
it, hundred
so
percent.
on the flip side, you also there's more, I would say, compassion, right? To use your word, where you know what, like you're not going to take it personally. That's why I would say we kind of push back, where it's like, should you feel more, um, like where you've become numb to that word? What came to my heart, like right when you said that, was the prodigal son, right? Where it's like, it, you can't like that. And I'm not a father, so I'm not here. I'm not giving advice. It just what came to me. But like that, it's like as long as you're the example, that's it, you know. And it's like you don't want to hear that, you
Right.
know, as a father. But like it's like that is, you know, it's a phase, right? I mean, I'm sure
He,
that's the teenage
yeah,
phase too, right?
he
I
hasn't
know
done it.
I wrestled with it with my parents. I've
Yeah,
said it.
he hasn't done it in a while. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
We've gotten along better the last few months. It is a phase, but you can't help but go numb,
Yeah.
and you don't realize you're going numb until one day it just dawns on you. Holy crap! This doesn't affect me like it used to. But you're 100%. The reason I'm repulsed is because I've been there, and that's what I was getting at. It's like PTSD of the heart
Mm.
when you get so deep into God's will. Um, the closer you draw to God, the more you begin to think like God, the more you begin to feel like God, the more you begin seeing the world as God sees the world. I mean, that's our goal.
Yeah.
In Eastern Orthodoxy, it's called theosis. Your relationship builds with God as you draw closer and become more God-like yourself. As our goal as Christians, it should be more God-like. Baptists call it being more Christ-like. When you um, get saved and born again, and you become a new creature, the Bible says we become a new creature because we start to image the become like the image of Christ. That's what we should copy. That's what we should try to obtain to. Um, so I think once you draw closer to God, you begin withdrawing yourself away from that stuff: the cussing, the sex, the drugs, the everything, and you enter this area of repulsion to the things because I feel like one, there's that psychological PTSD going on from the sinful life you've lived before, but you're also beginning to see it more from God's eyes, right? God's repulsed by that activity. He's repulsed by the foul language, and he's repulsed by the sexuality, and I think that's part of us beginning to be repulsed as well. So it's a whole mixture of things as we grow in Christ, right?
Yeah, and that's why I can't help but, I mean, at least from that false version of me, appreciate the paradoxes, right? Because on one, like, I can't help but see all these, like nobody's perfect, right? You hear that, and it's true. We need forgiveness. Forgive 7 times 77, right? But at the same time, we're told be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect,
Yes.
or like
No one's
again, that
perfect
which
is
I
a
want
cop
to
out.
do. Yeah, correct. And I put a video out recently on that idea because that's something my parents divorced when I was 11.
I was
And
5. I understand that.
5, yeah. So and I always kind of got I kind of my mother I always say my mother was a great mother. She was a horrible father, and that's how it was. That's how it is. And um, very much coaxed, like it's okay. Nobody's perfect. And as I got older, I started to resent that. And because like I was in FOE for a little bit, and I liked the message that they put out, Fraternity of Excellence, Zach Small's Fraternity of Excellence, where it's like, no, aim to be excellent, aim to be perfect. And I think that's what Christianity, at least from what I grew up hearing and from a lot of preachers, is that there was not enough saying that, like, we should aim for perfection, but we're not perfect at the same time. And it's like, what is the part of us that's not perfect? And that's the flesh. And the dying to the flesh, to that rebirth, is the perfection. And we're not thinking about being perfect, because we're never going to be perfect from that mentality. Because if we're thinking about it, then I'm going to be like, well, how much money does Joseph have, and what does he have? He has 2 cars. That's not it, because then I'll get 3 cars, and then it's, who
Right.
cares? That doesn't, it'll never be enough. But if I'm going internally, and reflecting what is perfect. Well, love is like the fruits of the Holy Spirit. What is not perfect, and why is it? And really, I would say wrestling with God. It's really a term I like, because I think we are called to wrestle with God. Like, we shouldn't just, okay, I'm going to believe God, like like we should seek to understand it in our heart, like, because you're a father, right? And this is something I spoke about with my father recently. Like, every time I was an idiot, so I said to my dad, every time I've been stupid in my life, or I've done the wrong thing, or I've slept around or sinned, he doesn't care as much about my sin as he does my heart. He wants me to
Right.
understand why it's wrong. He
Yes.
doesn't care about the bad part, like the things I did. And that, to me, is the Christian way, because once I understand it, then I don't do those things anymore. But if I don't understand it, then I'll resent him for saying it's wrong. Well, why is it like? And then I'll do it in spite of him.
Yeah, it's anytime I've punished my children, whether it's a grounding, a timeout, I resorted to spanking once or twice. As much as I hate that, um, it has always been followed with a "Do you understand why you're in trouble?"
Mm.
And I have had 1, 2, 3 hour long conversations explaining why this was wrong, why this level of punishment has occurred, why. Um, I'm a deep thinker, so I'm one of those people. If I have a decision to make, I will map out 8 possible end scenarios, weigh them good versus bad, and then make my decision that way. So, I've explained to my kids, well, this action can result in this, this, and this. Did you think about any of that? No. All right, well, this is why you're not allowed to do it, because this is what could happen, But it's very important to do that. I know people that have, I've seen people spank their kids or ground their kids, and the look on the kid's face is like, you can tell they don't know why they're in trouble. It's like you working at a job. If HR comes in there and lays a write-up slip down on your table and walks away, you want to know what you did to get wrote up, right? So your kids are the same way. They want to know why they don't get their phone for a week. You can't just be like, and when I say that, you can't be like, well, I told you not to do this and you did it anyway, so you're grounded for a week. Sure, they know why they're being grounded, but they don't know why you told them they couldn't do that in the first place. So I've learned as a father, trial and error. The oldest boy was 9 when I met him. The youngest boy was 2 when I met him. And I had never had experience with kids prior. So these poor kids, these poor boys of mine have endured me learning how to be a father. And they've handled it pretty well. But my piece of sage advice is fathers, when you make a rule, don't just go, this is the rule and you'll bet. This is my roof, my house,
Yeah.
my rules. You live here, you're going to do it my way. I've heard all that. Um, you need to sit down and tell them why that's a rule. Um, you can't go, um, you have to do this, no questions asked. Let's see. Trying to think of something off the top of my head, but I'm drawing a blank. But uh, I've discovered that my kids, when I tell them why I want them to do something, especially if I want it done a certain way, once I explain to them why, they're much more likely to do it.
Yeah.
And my oldest boy, he cracks jokes about it. He'll tell you all the time. I've said the words "Dad was right" so many times it's stupid. Because I will tell him the way to do something, why I want it done that way, but as a teenager, he thought he knew best, right? We've all been there.
Yep.
He learned very quickly that his way was much harder or failed altogether. I've told my kids multiple times when it's like a blanket statement at this point. You know, when I tell you to do something a certain way, I'm trying to help you get it done the easiest, quickest way
Yeah.
possible. I've been in your shoes. You don't want to spend 2 hours on this, so let's spend 30 minutes on it instead and do it this way. Right? So kids are so intelligent. They're more intelligent than people give them credit for. My 9 year old, she says stuff all the time that just blows my mind. I'm like, how do you even know that? Like, how are you that smart?
Well, there's one other thing I did want to talk about, and partially selfishly for myself, um, is the is what got you into homesteading. I mean, maybe to start, what it is for some people who don't even know what that is. Um,
Homesteading is a term that cannot be defined, but I'll talk about that in a second.
okay, and where people can start. I mean, the reason I say selfishly is like where would be a good place for me to start, where to get seeds, and maybe even to touch on. I mean, now they have COVID vaccines. You had posted about that in seeds. You have GMOs and all that. You know, God knows. People are eating organic, but they don't know where that organic is coming from. So maybe if you could just dive into your journey into homesteading, what it is, and where people can start, like myself, and maybe people who are more advanced, like what it grows into and what led you to it.
All right, so homesteading as a term means, I've come to learn it means different things to different people, and none of them are wrong. So I think that term will be defined by you as you get into it more. But as for me, homesteading is um, it's a return to the old tried and true ways of self sustainability. It is. I made a post about a year ago that said, "I've come to realize I was not born at the wrong time. I was born to keep the ways of my ancestors alive." So there's this rich knowledge that So you're the result of thousands of people who made it. They made it for you and me to be here. They made it without all our technology. They made it without all of our intelligence, without all the knowledge, without the supercomputer I'm holding in my hand right now, talking to you on. Um, and I think there's value in that knowledge and in that skill. I think there's value in knowing how to um, put a seed in the ground and turn it into food. I think there's value in knowing how to take sandy soil and turn it into workable, dark, nutrient-rich soil. I think there's value in knowing how to take that seed that turned into food that you harvest in June, eating it the next January, and it's still good, right? Because this is what our ancestors have done for millennia. I have ADHD and I was really distracted by a siren. I don't know if you could hear that or not.
Yeah, I get it.
It's so rare that a siren passes my house. But homesteading to me is being in control of my life and my family's life. So it started with, I'll give you a little background on me. I told you before we started, I don't talk about my military career. When I got out of the Army and I came home, I spent 2 years of my life homeless. Not 2 consecutive years, but 2 years of my life has been homeless in my 20s. And one of those years was in the tattoo shop I worked at, but another story for another day. I have been without things. I've been without not knowing where food's coming from. I've been not knowing where my shelter's coming from. I have been thirsty. I've been hungry. I've been tired. I, at one point in my life, got down to 160 pounds, which doesn't sound very bad. But my doctor saw me and freaked out because you could see every rib I owned. I know a lot of fat people say this, but I'm a big skeleton. I have a massive rib cage. If I drop below 170, you can count my ribs and see everything in between. It looks bad. But life got better. And then 2008 hit. And when 2008 hit, we had that little recession. We had a problem with my job. My income dropped. And, 2008 was before I was on Twitter. It's before I knew anything about reselling. Hell, that's the year the iPhone was released. So, we were still pretty young in a lot of things we were doing technologically. I got hungry again. I had moments where I was hungry again. I had moments where my car broke down and I spent weeks walking miles across town to get to work. And it kind of started something into me that that struggle 2008 2009 reminded me of the previous struggles I've had, how much I hated them and how much I did not want to endure them again. So it literally was, I went to the library and I started reading about this homesteading hippie culture from the 1970s. That's when all this began. And there's been homesteaders since the 70s. This movement's not new. It's gotten new steam under it in the last 5 years, but the movement itself is 50 years old. But it was a lot of research. Summers at great grandma's house when I was a kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, she had a 2-acre garden, and I had to spend it all day long working in it. A little bit of that came back to me, and I found these old copies of a magazine called Mother Earth News, and I started reading these articles in it, and these people are producing their own vegetables, and they're producing their own milk, and they're turning their own milk into cheese, and I'm like, if I can make it, if I can grow it, I don't have to worry about buying it. Like, that was the first thought mentality that I had, right? And I kind of ran with that, and I went out in the backyard and I borrowed a tiller from a neighbor, and I tilled a really big garden that was completely covered over by trees, and my garden failed that year. I didn't grow a single thing. But I didn't let it stop me, and I just kept going with education, learning, trying to make everything better for myself. A lot of ups and downs. See, I've been doing this. I tell everybody I've been homesteading for 11 years. I've been trying for 14, 15 years. Not 15, 14 years. I've been homesteading 11. I've been trying for 14. That's the first year I had the field garden. Is that right? Let me think. Yeah, about 14 years. But yeah, so there's the very, very humble, not exciting beginnings of what I'm doing now. If you got any questions or thoughts on that for me?
Yeah, I got. I mean, thoughts for sure. It's. I mean, to me, that's really the American way. Um, it's ultimately, I mean, we have a Declaration of Independence, right? And we've become so reliant on supermarkets and all that, and we're we're even it's funny. You have people who are reliant on the police, right? And I'm not someone who's against the police, but people that you heard a lot of people who were against the police, right? But the real solution, I think, is, and I know this is kind of like, it's very dairy, but like, if everybody understood the power of that Second Amendment, you wouldn't need the police if everyone was self-sufficient. But because that's not the case, we have that next piece. But ultimately, that would be the ultimate solution, is where everyone's interdependent. They take care of themselves from a protection standpoint. They take care of themselves from a food standpoint, education, right, homeschooling. I've had a couple people on that participate in that, and I think that's the way. But um, you mentioned the garden failing, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of failing that comes along with this. I think I've seen a couple posts that you know it's not something that's easy. Um, but where would you recommend people start?
Um, so last year. I taught 2 online classes on introduction to homesteading, and what I told people was to plant something. Just plant something. You can read if you want to, and you need to read. You need to learn. You need to educate. Um, but 7 out of 10 people get stuck there because you start consuming so much, you don't know where to go with it. And of the 3% that go with it, 1% of those, 2% of those, honestly, go overboard and they do too much. Most homesteaders fail because they go too big too fast. So what I told my class was to plant. I challenged them to grab a 5-gallon bucket and to plant a potato. One potato. You can grow a potato. I don't care if you live in an apartment or a townhouse, or if you have a balcony or a windowsill. You can grow a potato in a 5-gallon bucket.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
What?
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I grow most of my vegetables in containers. I don't put a whole lot in the ground. I put the bigger stuff, corn, amaranth, things like that, will go in the ground.
So you can grow another potato in a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah,
Another potato. Yeah, another potato.
yeah.
Wow.
So I'm going to help you out after this going forward. Something I used to charge people for homestead coaching. When coaching was big, but I'm going to help you. You got a balcony?
I don't have a balcony. I have a windowsill, and I have a front step I could put.
You said you got a front step.
Yeah, front
Does it,
step. I'm in an
does,
apartment, so I
does
could.
it get
It's
sunlight?
kind of. Yeah.
It does get sunlight.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna work on something.
All right.
You got a window. You got a front step. You're gonna grow something this year, and I'm
All
gonna
right.
help you with
Let's
that.
do it. I'll
Um,
check back in when it comes in.
I'm gonna send you to my Gumroad. I got several free resources on there. Um, I got a couple pay for resources, the free resources. I tell people if you like it afterwards, send me some money if you want to. But it's gonna give you a base knowledge without overwhelming you, so that you don't become one of those people. Holy crap! Do I need to do this? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do this? A lot of one guide you can skip because you don't have property. You have a windowsill and a step, but in that windowsill, there's you cook,
Yes.
grow herbs,
I
herbs
have grown
grown.
herbs. Yeah,
You have
basil and
grown herbs.
oregano.
See, you've
Yes.
already grown something.
Yeah, basic stuff. I've done. The most I've grown was the grape tomatoes.
Okay, so you're already taking steps towards something in your life is self sufficient. You didn't have to buy those great tomatoes, and that's how homesteading. That's how it starts. You do something. You take away something that you previously have had to buy, and you do it yourself.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not a potato. Maybe you really like cheese. Go on Amazon, spend $35, buy you a cheese making kit, and start making your own cheese. Make your own butter. You need a quart, a pint of heavy cream, and a blender, and you can make your own butter. Replace something that you currently buy with something you've done yourself. That's homesteading. And over time, you're going to replace a second thing, and then you're going to replace a third thing, and then you're going to replace a fourth thing. And that's how you build from the very basics.
Yep.
So I started with a garden. I had a big backyard, thought I was going to plant a garden. Um, that failed. So I began brewing my own beer. I had amazing fun brewing my own beer. And it is something I still do. I still brew beer. I still make wine. I still make mead. Um, it's fun to do. It's something I don't have to go and buy. My wife is Jewish. We celebrate the Sabbath every Friday evening, and that involves a bottle of wine. I don't have to go buy that wine because I make it myself. If the world ends today, I have Concord grapes growing out here. So guess what? We still get to celebrate the Sabbath with a bottle of wine, even with no electricity or anything else going on, because it's something I've replaced, right?
Yep.
So that's my challenge to everybody that listens to this. If you're interested in this, replace one thing that you buy and make it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. It's simple, and yeah, I think we live in a culture that overthinks it.
You want to learn preserving? Go get it. Go get a box of tomatoes. So any farmer's market, you're usually going to have somebody that's going to have boxes of tomatoes you can buy, right? This is why I say tomatoes. Tomatoes are high in acid, and that acid helps you preserve it. So it doesn't matter if you like Italian food and you want to make pasta sauce, you like Mexican food and you want to make some salsa. You're going to take that box of tomatoes. You're going to buy a big pot, a big deep pot. You're going to buy some jars, and then you're going to go home and you're going to make some pasta sauce. You're going to make some salsa, and you're going to water bath can it in those jars. And then a year from now, you're still going to be opening jars and eating it, and it's going to taste amazing. But you didn't grow the tomatoes; you bought the tomatoes. So if you want to learn preserving, that's the way you go there. Go to a farmer's market. Or honestly, most of the time, most people have wholesale produce wholesalers near them. You can go buy boxes of vegetables that they'll sell to most anybody. Most of them will. You just skip the supermarket altogether. So if it's not
Yeah,
organic,
they're out there. I mean, there's
yeah,
plenty of places that even right. I've gone to a farm nearby, but there's plenty of places out that you know that it's so easy to forget when you have ShopRite and Stop and Shop all over. These places are all over the place. Just do a
yeah.
search.
So go or what do you got near you? A Publix, a Kroger's, a Walmart. Go when they got their green beans on sale, and buy 5 pounds of green beans in some jars, and get on Google and look up uh, green bean canning recipe, and just follow it. That's how you get started on when you decide you want to start preserving your food. For the longest time, when my gardens were still small, and we still buy food, we still buy groceries from farmers markets. Uh, 2 years ago, I bought a kiddie pool full of corn for $25 because the farmer didn't want to take it home, and they knew it wouldn't be good to come back the next week. So we spent all the next day shucking and canning corn, and I got 20 I'm going to say 23 quarts of corn. I think it was a little more than that for $20. All it took was a little bit of work, and I'm still eating on that corn. I'm making beef stew tomorrow, and I'm going to pull out a quarter of that corn to put in it. So, there's ways. this is where I say people get overwhelmed when they go too big too fast, right? They go out and they buy their 5 acres of land and 3 goats and a cow and uh, a herding dog or a guard dog and 20 chickens, and next thing you know, they're like, "Holy crap! I didn't know I was going to spend $200 a month in feed. I didn't know I was going to have to spend 60 hours a week in my garden keeping the weeds at bay and the pests off because I want to be organic." Um, and a year or two later, they start selling. They're moving back to the city, moving back to the suburbs. I've seen it. Many more of those than successes.
Sure.
Right. There are some people that go all out and they go big, and they win. They win at it. But those people also have a sudden deep drive for it. Homesteading is one failure after another. Homesteading is expensive. I tell people I've thrown away so much money. That's what I brought when I was doing coaching a couple years ago. That's what I brought to people was my mistakes. So bring me your plan. Let's discuss your plan. All right, you're about to lose $3,000 because you're going to do this way.
Yeah.
Let's not do this way. This way I know works. So that was in coaching you got to bring a value. That was the value I brought. I'm going to charge you $150 to save you thousands of dollars 6 months from now. But it's one small step at a time, and it's when you do one small step at a time, you have one small failure at a time when you fail, because you're going to fail at something at some point.
Yeah.
That's how we get better, is by failing. That first batch of green beans that you're so proud of, maybe the seal didn't take because you had the pressure set wrong on the pressure cooker, and now you got 5 pounds of green beans you got to eat in the next 2 weeks, or you're going to get bad.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to worry about this up in New Jersey, but down here in Mississippi, we put a 5-gallon bucket out on your porch with your potato in it, and it gets infested with fire ants, and they kill the potato and they eat everything that was growing in there. It's a failure. It might have been more out of your control than anything, but it's still a failure. I lose crops every year to flooding, to fire ants, to skunks, to, thank goodness those birds are moving. I got an armadillo, loves to tear up my garden. I have the most effective thing I put out there is marigolds. They don't like the smell of it. So rabbits, squirrels, they'll stay away from marigolds. Gardening tip for anybody listening. Deer also hate marigolds. So you learn. It's a never ending process of learning. Every year I fail at something. Every year I win at something. Every year I take something I win at and I try to improve upon it, and I fell at it on the next year because I couldn't leave a good thing alone. So it's a never ending process, but it's such. If you are really concerned about what's going on in your food and in your health care, then it's definitely a lifestyle worth pursuing. It's worth the struggle. It's worth the headaches. It's worth wasting money. I haven't been to a doctor in 4 years. Even when I caught COVID twice, I stayed at home. I treated my COVID with a plant called mullein. Mullein is very well documented for its properties with lung infections and things like that. And there's no such thing as a certified herbalist, but I am a certified herbalist in that I took a class and I have a certification that I took the class and for making herbal medicines. Most people don't realize that 80 to 90% of all prescription medications out there are
They have them in it.
based off of a natural compound.
Yeah.
So actually the Rockefellers tried to patent, I believe it was paper birch back in the late 1800s, because the inner lining of the paper birch bark basically is aspirin. And the Supreme Court was like, you can't patent something that comes naturally. So they took samples and they recreated it, and they created the first aspirin out of it. And that's where modern pharmaceuticals became a thing, because prior to that, you went and seen an herbalist.
Yep.
People have forgotten. Dandelions. We kill dandelions. You've probably seen me over the years praise dandelions and post all kinds of things about them. They're a miracle plant. Dandelion greens are more nutritious than spinach. The roots will control high blood pressure and diabetes. You bake the root and you make a tea out of it or coffee. Um, I've For a while I replaced all coffee with dandelion root tea. It's very earthy, very good taste, good flavor. You didn't have to add sugar or milk or nothing to it because there was no bitterness. And that was at a time I was having some blood pressure issues. A couple months into drinking that every day, I no longer need blood pressure medicine, and I was good. Blood pressure, beetroots are good for blood pressure. There's so many things out there that's common. It's food. I posted recently that food is medicine. I believe 100% food is medicine. And when you start getting that mentality and that belief system, that's when it starts becoming more important where your food's coming from. And so years ago, I used to harp on people growing their own food, grow your own food, grow your own food. If you're not in a situation to grow your own food, you need to change your situation. I've lightened up a little bit on that stance. So, Michael, you're in an apartment. You obviously cannot grow a year's worth of food there.
Yeah, and we're not
So
in a
now it's
garden
your
state.
responsibility. Well, now it's your responsibility to know where your food's coming from.
Yes, that was another one of the questions. So, how do you know where the seed, like, where do you source seeds, and you know,
So, there's a company. There's a couple
how do you
companies I'll
know?
go.
Like, how do you know something is organic? How do you know? If you mention a company, how do you know? Like, that's the thing. Like,
Well, okay, so like Baker's Creek, I order a lot from them. I've done a ton of research on Baker's Creek. I will not order from a company until I've researched. I heard somebody say, "Beat a dead horse with a dead cat that choked on a dead mouse." That's me when I research before I buy a source. Baker's Creek is they sell heirloom and organic seeds. I trust them. It's one of the few places that I trust. I do not trust companies like Burpee, who sells GMO and non-GMO seeds. Um, so what? And honestly, we're to a point that it's almost impossible to have a non-genetically modified plant, even if you're growing it yourself from a trusted seed source. Because if you're within a quarter mile, half mile of a GMO plant, that pollen's blowing over to your plant, and it's changing the genetic structure of your plant.
gotcha.
So the world is very polluted by GMOs, or America is very polluted by GMOs. It But again, even knowing that, and that sounds kind of dark and dismal, it's still better to try.
Yeah.
To not be exposed to it, right? So I know around me, I've met all my neighbors over the 10 years I've been here. Only one of them grows a garden within a quarter mile of me, and they are all heirloom. I have taken the time to search what's a quarter mile around them, and nobody around them regularly grows a garden. So they're not being polluted, and I'm not being polluted. But again, I don't know if you call it being a nosy neighbor or if you call it just being concerned enough to research it. Everything's public information. You can find out anything from Google Earth just about your neighbors and what's going on. So get on Google Earth, search a quarter mile diameter. You see a cornfield, you see a soybean field, is there a farm nearby? If there is, go meet that farmer. Most farmers don't care that you knock on their door.
Yeah.
Farmers markets. The best place to start sourcing your food is a local farmers market. And then when you meet the vendors, just straight out ask them, how do you grow? Is this organic? Is it heirloom? Um, all my vegetables are organic. I cannot apply an organic label to my vegetables because I don't have the 10 grand in fees for the USDA to come out and test this and look at that and do that. But I grow organically. So I can claim my vegetables are grown organically, but they're not organic vegetables, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I sell at the farmers markets organically grown heirlooms. But it is just ask. And I've had people that come out to my farm that has bought vegetables from me before. And they just straight ask, hey, can we come visit the farm? Yeah, come on out. I tell people not to trust a vegetable grower that won't let you see the operation. Where I buy my milk at's a local dairy. It's family owned. Or 5 miles down the road from me. I went and bought milk one day and I said, hey, do you mind if I see the operation? And she goes, well, we don't really give tours. And I'm like, well, I'm not wanting a tour. I just want to see, how you operate. So they took me back there to where the pumps were, and they gave me a little mini tour, and I've been buying milk from them ever since. They don't do hormones or any other type of injections like that, and that was my big concern. And I talked to them about that while I was there. Most of them are very honest. They'll tell you if they're giving their cows hormones or not. I don't know many farmers that will hide something. I don't know any farmers that sell non-GMO foods or GMO foods as non-GMO foods. I'm good friends with a vegetable peddler. He buys all his stuff from Alabama, from a big wholesaler warehouse. And when you talk, well, hell, honestly, half of the boxes still have like product of Florida or whatever written on them. But if you ask him, where's this from? He'll be like, these are Georgia peaches. This is Florida corn. This is Louisiana grapes or Louisiana strawberries. So most people are very honest with you. And just ask, just talk to people. Knowing your food always means knowing your farmer. And then the more you buy from that farmer, you start striking up friendships with that farmer.
Yeah.
I have my loyal customers. I look forward to seeing them every week. I cut them discounts. They have been to my house. I have cooked for them, some of them. It is, this is where you start getting into the importance of community and building community around you. And it starts on such a small local scale. So where you're at, I'm sure within an hour drive of your city, there's somebody growing vegetables.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Within a few miles, there's a few people locally here.
Yeah. And you got a farmer's market nearby?
Yes.
That's where you go meet those people at.
Yep.
And you don't come out the gate swinging, hey, can I come out to your farm? I've heard them a couple of times. Because what else are you going to do? Go to the grocery store and buy mystery product anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you've been sacrificing your body for 20 years. You may have to do it for 2 or 3 more weeks. And because you don't want to, you got to build trust with the farmer as well, right? So we'll talk to you about anything. And we'll give people tours of the property, but at the same time, if I feel like you're being kind of sketchy talking to me at the farmer's market, you are not being invited out to the farm. I got kids and everything else out here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's all about building relationships. And then, we started out buying from farmers markets. Now, most of my income comes from farmers markets. That's where we go and we sell our soap and we sell our hot sauces and laser engravings. And once the vegetables plants start producing, we'll have vegetables out there. We bake bread. I sell homemade bread every week. Wintertime or Thanksgiving and Christmas, I killed selling homemade pies at the farmers market. So it is it's not all of our income by any means. My wife's a teacher, so we have that income there. But we would be okay if she wasn't a teacher. We just wouldn't be as okay.
Well, I do want to promote anything you're working on. I know you said your website should be back up, but where can other people find you?
I am on Twitter at Homestead Padre. And it's kind of really, I mean, you know me from Facebook, but I don't hook up with a lot of people on Facebook. I stay pretty private there. My website is www.smith-homestead.com when it does come back up.
Okay.
So it is,
And I also
yeah.
see you have a LinkedIn, right? People can find here.
I have a LinkedIn. I couldn't tell you what it was. It's been so long
Yeah, I
since I've
have it.
logged into it.
I'm sharing it on the screen here for people
Okay.
can see. So if you want to find anything that Joseph is working on, you can find it here.
So yeah, if you go to that Twitter page and click on that link right there, that takes you to pretty much everything I do, everything I have. So that's my link tree.
Got it.
Man, that was
Well,
an amazing dinner right there.
right there. Oh yeah, I saw that. I did see that when you posted that. But Joseph, I do appreciate you joining me. Appreciate your wisdom and what you're doing.
Yeah,
And
man, it's been long overdue. We've been trying for a little while now.
yes, we have. But definitely appreciate you joining me for a conversation, brother. Look forward to
Yeah,
doing
I
it
enjoyed
again.
the conversation.